I know what you're thinking. Why do I need to edit a children's book manuscript or a picture book manuscript that's only a few hundred words? What's the point of that? You know, how hard can it be to write a children's book, right? But the truth is there's going to be several different layers of editing that needs to take place. And I talk about all of this in my new book, The Indie Author's Dozen, which explains all the different members of your publishing team. And it's not released yet, but you can go to indieauthorsdozen.com right now and download the introduction chapter to that book. It's unedited. It's been self-edited, but it's not professionally edited yet. But you can download it, kind of get a glimpse of what the book is about. Again, that's indieauthorsdozen.com. But today I want to talk about 5 different steps that you can follow to self-edit your book. And self-editing is just the first layer of editing. I like to think of it this way. I've worked a little bit in construction. My dad is a carpenter, and I've worked on a construction crew as a teenager. And one thing I've done a lot with my dad especially is doing the finishing work on a wall that's been repaired with like the drywall, and then you put the sheetrock mud over any seams or anything like that to clean it up. And one thing I know, if you've never done this before, is that you need several layers of this sheetrock mud, because each layer will make that wall smoother and smoother, and those imperfections in the wall, holes or seams or whatever, start to disappear with the more layers you have. And in between each layer, you also need to sand it down to make it smoother. You might have 3 or 4 layers of sheetrock mud on before you can paint. We're actually going through this right now in our own house, where we had some skylights replaced and a large picture window. And so right now we have a painter who is actually doing the mudding and the painting for us. And she just finished up the sheetrock mudding today. And I believe this is day number 3 or 4 that she's had to do this week. So I'm going through this right now. I'm also self-editing my own book right now. So I want to go over 5 different steps that you can follow to self-edit your children's book or adult book, whatever kind of book it is. But these will just kind of help you to know what to look for, or at least give you some steps to follow. So tip number 1 is, after you have written the book, actually, let me back up. This is tip number 0, okay? Don't self-edit while you write. Okay, go ahead and finish that manuscript, finish the story, finish the whole book before you go back and self-edit. This is especially true for longer books, because if you get bogged down into self-editing every paragraph, every page, whatever, as you write, it will take you so much longer to write. This is definitely a step where I would say do as I say, not what I do, because I definitely fell into this trap, and that's why it's taken me so long to write this book. But anyways, I digress. Don't self-edit while you write. Wait until it's finished to self-edit. And then my original step 1 was this: let it chill. You think about a hot pizza right out of the oven. If you take a bite of that hot pizza, what's going to happen? You're going to burn the roof of your mouth. I've done it many times. That pizza looks so good, there is no patience, right? But you need to be a little patient with that manuscript. You need to let it sit and chill a little bit before you start editing it. Now, there's a balance. There's a fine balance with that. First of all, by letting it chill, it'll give you a little bit of clarity. It'll let that story kind of sit in your mind a little bit. And maybe after a few days, you realize you want to take it into a different direction, or you want to change some details here. And it'll just kind of marinate in your mind a little bit. The second thing is, you don't want it to sit too long, because then you actually take the you take the possibility of it just kind of falling into the death pile. We all know what that is, right? It's, maybe either a stack of manuscripts or things that you never end up getting to. And so we don't want it to fall into that category. So just give it, a few days, a week or so, especially for children's books, picture books, just to let it chill a little bit before you get started. Step number 2 is show, don't tell. So as you begin reading through your manuscript, reading through your story, look for signs when you should show and not tell. And what I mean by that is, with a picture book, it's mostly pictures, right? The text, it's not text heavy usually. It's very imagery focused. There's lots of illustrations, full page illustrations, and really you want the illustrations to tell the story more than the words. So show, don't tell. If you see in your manuscript that you're describing a lot of things that could actually be shown in the illustrations, then a lot of that can be cut out. And that's where you can start to really reduce your word count. If you tend to be over wordy, and I fall into this too, you can cut down on a lot of that word count if you look for ways that the illustrations can show what you're describing in your manuscript. So tip number 2, show, don't tell. Tip number 3 is drama sells. Now, I recently created a video about the primer formula that I've developed that you can follow while you're actually writing your manuscript. And actually, if you follow that primer formula, your self-editing is going to be very simple. The very first step in the primer formula is to have a good plot. And what I explained in that is that your plot is not so much about the message, but the motion of the story. And one part of your plot is that your story has conflict. And that's what I want to get to with drama sells. A story has to have conflict. So as you're reading through your manuscript, you may realize it's not really much happening. There's no conflict. There needs to be some sort of something that is causing drama in your story to really make it interesting for your readers. Even if those readers are kids, they need some sort of drama. They need a conflict. You think of your favorite stories. What kind of conflict did they face? It could be as easy as, not being able to find their friend, or maybe they have broken their toy. It really totally depends on the story itself. I'm just kind of coming up with things on the fly. But the point is, your story needs conflict. If it's just a couple of people sitting at a table having a conversation and nothing happens, it's not going to be a fun book. So there needs to be some conflict in the story. And step number 4 is, once you've gone through the story, you look for ways that the illustration can explain part of the story. You have looked to make sure you have conflict in the story. Then you want to read it out loud. In fact, you can ask other people to read it out loud to you, because when you read it out loud, you may find places in the story where you get a little tripped up on the words. Maybe they don't flow too easy. This is especially true if you're writing in rhyme and meter. You may realize that some of those words don't rhyme as well as you thought they would, or the meter isn't really flowing so well. There might be a little skip here or there. And so reading it out loud is really going to help. That also comes in handy if you plan on doing author visits and you're going to be reading it out loud to classrooms or whole school assemblies, you want to make sure that you can read out loud pretty clearly and easily, and that's going to help other teachers and parents who are reading to their kids as well. It's got to be easy to read out loud. Step number 5, split it up. We talked about the pizza. Split that story pizza up, okay? When you're looking at a picture book, typically there's 32 pages. It has to be split into 4 pages, so you can have as few as 24, or depending on your printer, maybe even less. I say don't go lower than 28 unless it's like a board book or something. 32 is kind of the magic number. You can also go higher. It can have 36, 40 pages, whatever. The point is, with a picture book, it has to be a number that is a multiple of 4. 32 is kind of the magic number. So let's look at 32. Now, if you take out the front matter and the back matter, that is like the title page, the copyright page, maybe a half title or dedication page, something like that. Then in the back, you might have your author and illustrator bios. You may have a little more information about the story back there. Then you're left with maybe 28 pages or 14 spreads for your story. Excuse me. So split up your book and see how you would give those page breaks. So try to split up your book maybe into 14 sections, 14 slices. That pizza split up into 14 slices, and see how it flows. See how you can help it flow. Now, it may not be even with each slice. You may end up having 16 slices, so that would be a 36-page book. You follow me? So split up your book. Part of what I talk about with the plot is making sure that you have that motion. And one thing with, if you have a chapter book, really great writers will have a hook at the end of each chapter that makes the reader really want to start the next chapter, even if they don't have time. I'm reading actually an Andrew Peterson book. He has a series called the Wingfeather Saga, and we're on number 4 right now. I'm reading it to my son, and after we finish every chapter, he's begging me to read the next one because Andrew is so good at hooking the reader at the end of each chapter. Well, you need to do the same thing in your picture book, but you need to be able to do it on pretty much every spread. You need to keep the motion going, keep them engaged and wanting to turn the page, whether that's through the text or, through your art notes that you give to the illustrator. Maybe it's a combination of the illustrations and the text really needs to keep the motion going page after page. And so splitting up your manuscript, kind of seeing how that motion is going to happen from spread to spread, is really going to help you. And this is what you can do as a self-editor before you move on to the next step in editing. So those are really the 5 main steps I would give you. Once again, if you follow the primer formula, you'll have come a long way just in writing your manuscript. And you can also use the primer formula for editing your book to make sure that those 6 buckets that I include in the formula are included. And so I'll put a link to the primer formula at the end of this video. And after you self-edit the book, that's when you're going to go into beta reading and having some other people read your book and give you some feedback that you can then plug in and make some more editing to your manuscript before you pass it on to the professional editor or editors, depending on how many end up needing. You might need a developmental editor as well as a line-by-line editor, possibly a proofreading editor. They could be individual separate people, or they could be the same editor doing all of those. But my point is there's layers. There's steps you have to take in editing. Self-editing is the very first one. So follow these 5 steps, follow my primer formula, which I will place the link somewhere here at the end of the video for you to follow. And good luck with your manuscript. Be sure to go to indieauthorsdozen.com to download the first introduction chapter to my brand new book for children's book authors who want to be successful at publishing their own picture books. indieauthorsdozen.com. Thanks.